Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the Dub Dive.
Today we're jumping into Judges chapter 1.
Right, picking up right after Joshua's time. He'd led the initial entry, some big wins.
But the hard part was just starting actually taking possession of the land, tribe by tribe.
And Judges 1 throws you right into the complexity. It's not like a clean sweep at all.
No, definitely not. You get successes, sure, but also significant failures, alliances, these really surprising details.
Exactly. It really sets the tone for the whole book of Judges, showing the messy reality. So we want to dig into what this chapter tells us.
What insights does it offer about the challenges right at the beginning?
So how did they even start? What was the first step after Joshua?
Well, the chapter opens with that exact question. The Israelites ask the Lord, basically, who goes first? Who leads the fight against the Canaanites?
A crucial moment. They need direction.
And the answer comes back, Judah is to go. God says he's given the land into their hands.
Okay, so Judah gets the assignment. What's their first move?
It's interesting. Before attacking, they reach out to the Simeonites, their relatives.
For help.
Yeah. They say, essentially, come fight with us in our territory and we'll fight with you in yours. Mutual support.
Smart. Shows they knew it was a big job.
Absolutely. They needed each other. So Simeon agrees, they team up.
And then they attack.
Then they attack. And the text reports a big initial victory. They strike down 10,000 Canaanites and Perizzites at Besek.
Wow, 10,000. So a strong start. Seems like divine backing is there.
It seems that way. But then the story gets darker. They find the local king.
The Dani Besek.
Right. They fight him, beat his army, capture him when he tries to run.
And then they do something pretty grim.
Extremely grim. They cut off his thumbs and his big toes.
Thumbs and big toes. Why? I mean, that's so specific. What's the text suggest?
Well, what's fascinating is that Dani Besek himself explains it, or at least interprets it. He says, 70 kings with their thumbs and big toes cut off used to scavenge under my table.
70 kings. So he did this to others.
Apparently. And he sees this as God paying him back. Now God has repaid me, he says.
So it's framed as like divine justice, a kind of eye for an eye almost.
Exactly. The text presents it that way through his own words. It really highlights the brutal cycle of violence in that world.
And what happens to him then?
They bring him to Jerusalem and he dies there.
Jerusalem. And Judah attacks Jerusalem itself after this, right?
Yes, the text says they attacked it, took it with the sword, and set it on fire. Important detail to remember for later.
Okay. So Judah's campaign rolls on after that.
It does. They move into their other allotted areas, the hill country, the Negev down south, the western foothills.
Targeting key places.
Yeah, like Hebron, which used to be called Kiriath Arba. They defeat the Anakites living there, Sheshai, Ahiman, and Talmai. Big names.
Oh, they move on to Debir.
Formerly Kiriath Sefer. And this is where we get that really interesting personal story involving Caleb.
Ah, Caleb. Famous from the Exodus generation. What does he do?
He throws down a challenge. He says, whoever captures Kiriath Sefer gets to marry his daughter, Aksa.
A classic hero's reward kind of thing.
Pretty much. A way to reward bravery. And someone steps up?
Othniel, Caleb's younger brother, or relative.
Right, Othniel, son of Kenaz. He takes the city. Caleb honors the deal, gives him Aksa.
But Athia has her own agenda, doesn't she?
She does. It says she urged Othniel probably to ask for more land, maybe better land. But then she goes to Caleb herself.
Gets off her donkey, approaches her father.
Caleb sees her and asks, what do you want?
And she's very direct. She asks for a blessing, a special favor.
Yeah, she says, look, you gave me land in the Negev, which is dry. Give me springs of water, too.
That's incredibly practical. Water is everything there.
Totally. It shows you what really mattered for making the land work. And it shows her initiative, her agency.
Does Caleb agree?
He does. Gives her the upper and lower springs. It's a small detail, but it says so much about the realities of settlement.
Good point. Are there other groups mentioned alongside Judah?
Yeah, briefly. The Kenites, Moses' father-in-law's people, they come up with Judah and settle near Arad. Shows some integration.
And the partnership with Simeon continues.
It does. They jointly attack and destroy a place called Zephath, renaming it Hormah, meaning destruction.
Judah also seems to have success against some Philistine cities.
The text says they took Gaza, Ashkelon, and Ekron and their territories. So Judah's start looks pretty strong on the surface.
Capturing key cities, winning battles, making alliances, sorting out land. The text even says the Lord was with the men of Judah.
Yes, and it specifically says they took possession of the hill country. That geographical note is crucial.
Ah, because there's a but coming, isn't there?
There is
Huh.
a big one. Right after saying the Lord was with them and they took the hills, it says Judah was unable to drive out the inhabitants of the plains.
Unable, even with God's help. Why?
The text gives one reason, and it's a game changer.
Yeah.
Because they had iron chariots.
Iron chariots, that's
Now, look,
specific.
hugely specific and significant. It tells you that military technology and terrain mattered immensely. Chariots were devastating on flat, oaken ground, the plains.
So even with divine favor in the hills, the tech advantage of the plains dwellers stopped Judah cold.
That's exactly what the text implies. It's a dose of military reality. Maybe something the Israelites didn't have the tech or tactics to counter effectively at this point, especially in that terrain.
That's a really critical insight. It complicates the picture of conquest significantly.
It absolutely does. And this failure in the plains contrasts sharply with Caleb's success against the Anakites in Hebron, which is hill country.
Right, linking back to Moses' promise, success in the hills, failure on the plains.
And this pattern, this inability to fully clear the land, wasn't just Judah's problem. The chapter makes that very clear.
Okay, so let's look at the other tribes. How did they fare?
It's largely a story of, well, incomplete conquest. Take Benjamin. They failed to kick the Jebusites out of Jerusalem.
Wait, but didn't Judah just capture and burn Jerusalem?
They did, which suggests maybe Judah's victory wasn't permanent or only partial, or the Jebusites moved back in quickly. The point is, Benjamin couldn't secure it.
And the text adds that kicker. To this day, the Jebusites live there with the Benjamites.
Right. Coexistence because of failure. Not exactly the plan.
So Jerusalem remains contested territory. What about the house of Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh?
They have one notable success. Bethel. They use spies, find a secret way, and thanks to a local man they promised to spare.
So they destroy Bethel.
Yes, but they let the informant and his family go. He later goes off and builds another city. So a tactical win, but again, not a widespread clearing.
And then the list of failures really starts to pile up, doesn't it?
It does. Manasseh couldn't drive people out of major centers like Beth-Shan, Tanah, Megiddo. The text says the Canaanites were determined to live in that land.
Determined. That's a strong statement.
It is. And it says later, when Israel got stronger, they didn't drive them out then either, just put them to forced labor.
So not expulsion, but subjugation. That's a different outcome.
A very different outcome. And you see it repeated. Ephraim couldn't take Gezer. The Canaanites just lived on among them.
Among them, that phrase seems important.
It keeps cropping up. Zebulun failed in Kitron and Nahalol. Canaanites remained among them, but were eventually put to forced labor.
So failure leads either to just living side by side or eventually imposing forced labor if the Israelites get strong enough.
That seems to be the pattern. Asher, up north, had widespread failures along the coast, and inland, Akko, Sidon, lots of places.
And the consequence.
Stated plainly, the people of Asher lived among the Canaanite inhabitants of the land because they failed to drive them out.
Same for Naphtali.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Failed in Beth Shemesh, Beth Anath. Lived among the Canaanites, who eventually became forced laborers for them.
This living among them feels like it's setting up future problems.
Absolutely. It's the root of so many issues later in Judges and beyond: cultural mixing, religious compromise, ongoing conflict. The idea of a separate, distinct people in a fully claimed land is already fractured.
What about the tribe of Dan?
Their situation seems even worse initially. The Amorites actually pushed them back, confined them to the hill country, wouldn't let them into the plain.
Wow, so Dan was losing ground. Again, the plains being the issue, perhaps.
It seems likely, maybe similar reasons to Judah's struggle, even if chariots aren't mentioned for the Amorites there. Control of the open areas was key. The Amorites were also dug into mountain strongholds.
But wasn't there a later development with them?
Yes, another twist involving the house of Joseph. When Joseph's tribes grew stronger, they were able to put those resistant Amorites to forced labor.
So power dynamics shifted over time, allowing for subjugation, even if not expulsion?
Exactly. It shows a long, drawn-out process, not a quick victory.
Okay, so pulling this all together from chapter 1, what's the main takeaway?
I think the main takeaway is the stark contrast. You have the promise, the initial divine mandate, some clear successes like Judah's early wins or Caleb getting Hebron.
And the brutality, like Adoni-Besek, and the practical stuff, like Aksa wanting water.
Right, all that's in there. But the overwhelming theme, repeated over and over, tribe after tribe, is the failure to complete the job. Failure to drive out the inhabitants.
And the text points to reasons: iron chariots, Canaanite determination, the difficulty of taking certain strongholds.
Precisely. And the result wasn't conquest. It was often coexistence, sometimes with forced labor imposed later. This living among the other nations is the key outcome presented in Judges 1.
It fundamentally changes the situation on the ground from what maybe was envisioned.
It really does. It sets up this environment of compromise, conflict, and cultural pressure right from the beginning. The stage is set for everything that follows in the book.
So, to wrap up our deep dive on Judges 1, it paints a picture not of swift conquest, but of a really fragmented, messy, and often stalled beginning to the settlement.
Yeah, the key things that stand out are that technological challenge with the chariots, the sheer resilience of the existing populations, and this resulting pattern of coexistence or, at best, subjugation through forced labor rather than removal.
Understanding this complicated start really is crucial for making sense of the struggles and the cycles you see throughout the rest of Judges. It explains why things got so messy.
It shows the roots of the problems were there from day one.
So here's a final thought for you to consider. Given this picture in Judges 1, the widespread failures, the Israelites ending up living right alongside Canaanites and Amorites, what does this immediate, on-the-ground reality suggest about the sheer difficulty they'd face in maintaining their unique identity, their covenant faithfulness? How might these early compromises, this failure to fully possess the land, shape the entire trajectory of their story in this period? Something to really chew on.